back to terrible at fishing. Well, I thought it'd be good to go over what happened to me and why I survived. So, as you guys know, I kayak fish. I have a great kayak, the Feelfree Mocha 12.5, version 2. And I also have outriggers on it. So, by Yak Gear. They're great outriggers. They really are. But, and with the outriggers, they're impossible to flip over. So, a couple weeks ago, I went out and it was rough waters, but I've been in rougher. There's some white caps out there, but, again, I've been in rougher. And I was just beating a storm. I wanted to get out there early. I got all my gear. I was going to test lures, see how they swim, stuff like that. So I go out to the lake at Lake of the Woods. It's got 4 feet of snow on the ground. I'm the only one on the lake. So I go out there, and you always use your anchor in rough waters a lot. So I put my anchor in, and I went to pull it up, and it snagged on something. So I'm just muscling it up. It's maybe 100 pounds of resistance on it. That's how stable outriggers are. Okay, they really are. So I pull it up, and there's this cable that was running across the lake. So I popped it off, and all of a sudden I felt my kayak just lose its stability. And I was doing a live at the time, and you heard me saying something's wrong with my kayak. Maybe it's taking in water. I don't know. So I started paddling towards shore. A wave hit what ended up happening is that one of my outriggers on my port side snapped off. My starboard side, which is my right side, was facing the waves, and that outrigger flipped me without any resistance. I mean, it just had leverage. Nothing I can do about it. In the water I go, in freezing water. Now, as soon as your body hits freezing water, I mean, it just goes into shock. And I have a hard time breathing, as you guys know, so I have very limited lung functions. I couldn't breathe right away. So I knew I was in trouble. Let me tell you, at this point, if this happens to you, do not lose your head. I mean, just slow down like I did. Just for a moment, gather your senses and breathe. And I have limited breathing functions anyway, but it's going to hit your lungs, and you just focus on breathing. Gather your senses, see what's around you. I couldn't flip my kayak back over because it still had one outrigger on it. But I couldn't move a whole lot because every motion that I made, I lost my breath. I couldn't move. So I looked around on my upside down kayak. I saw my other outrigger floating away, and at that point I knew what happened. So the other outrigger was still attached to my kayak. So the bar that attaches it to the kayak was underwater, but I pushed myself up on top of it. So I sat on it so I didn't have to struggle. And I could just not move. And I held onto my kayak. So initially, I saved my life by just finding a position that limited motion. If I kept on moving, I would expend more heat, more than, and my body core temperature was going to get low, and I would have froze to death. So I had to literally just stop moving in the water. People saw me. I mean, I was in the spot. They saw me. They rushed to the shore. They were yelling at me, but I was 300 yards away. I couldn't hear them, but I saw them. Next thing that saved my life was how I was dressed. Now, it was a cold morning, so I put on 2 shirts. Well, this one actually was one of them. 2 jackets. All right, I had 2 jackets on, and then my personal flotation device. Always wear your life jackets, your Pfd. So having 5 layers of clothing and insulation on me helped. Now, what ends up happening is like a wetsuit. Wetsuits allow water in and then create a thin bladder for your body to heat it up and keep you from, and insulate you. What ended up happening is that these 5 layers of clothing insulated it. And so I dressed for the cold outside and initially ended up saving my life in the water. So normally after 30 minutes in the water, you're near death. So I stayed. The current was not taking me towards the shore. I knew. I waved. Did the distress call, and I knew they probably couldn't see my hand. So I grabbed my paddle, and I waved the paddle, in order for them to know that I was in distress. I knew they didn't have a boat in the water, or one near the water. There were no other boats on the lake, so I was by myself in this water. And so all I could do is sit on that strut, hold on to my kayak, not move, and wait. Talk to God a lot. Thinking, I'm going to die fishing. I have beaten death 5 times in 7 years. I have been resuscitated twice. I've been on life support once. And then I've been near death. And you think I'd be good at this, right? But for 30 minutes go by, me floating in the water out there with my upside down kayak, me sitting on this strut. Not moving. Trying not to move at all. Again, more motion that you have in the cold water, the more heat that you're going to expel, and that's necessary to keep you alive from freezing to death. So what ended up happening is after 30 minutes, so one of the employees found a kayak, a tandem, in the snow, and dragged that over to the shoreline near me. And 2 of the employees, Chris and Lorana, they get on. I mean, I love them all, and they love me, and everybody was freaking out. They get in the kayak and they paddle out to me. And so they tied a rope to my kayak that I was holding on to, and they backpedaled. They just backpedaled towards shore, and until I got into shallow water, and somehow, even though I couldn't feel my legs, I was able to walk onto the rocks and then get myself up to shore with the help of others. One of the owners, Dan, he got in the ATV thing and got me to the ambulance. Ambulance got me to the heliport, and then they meta-flighted me. So, in hindsight, I shouldn't have gone out in rough waters. But accidents happen. Accidents happen. And it doesn't matter, how experienced you are in kayaking or boating or whatever. You can find yourself in a situation that I found myself in. And always wear your Pfd. Always. Don't ever go out without your Pfd on. There's some I have a good looking Pfd. I mean, there's some real sexy looking Pfd, so don't worry about that. And then dress for the situation that you're going out in. I mean, if 75 degree water, you don't need to wear, multiple layers of clothing. But when the water's below 40, have layers of clothing on. Now, do not take those clothing off, all right, when you're in the water, to think that you can swim better, all right? Don't do that, because it'll just freeze you faster. Don't think you can put your PFD on in the water either, because you're not going to. As soon as you hit that water, your body's going to go into shock, and you're going to get disoriented. You're going to have a hard time breathing. Your muscles are going to tense up. You're not going to be able to put a PFD on, all right? At best, you could just hold on to it and float it in, against your chest if you weren't wearing it, which is second best. But the best thing is already have it on you, all right? Really take it from me, all right? That wearing your PFD, and I always wear my PFD, always. I lost thousands of dollars worth of stuff out there. All my rods, all my tackle, all went to the bottom of the lake. Hopefully, I'll be able to find one or two of them. But I want you to put safety first, all right? Before anything else. If you have somebody else on your boat, make sure you are the responsible party. Make sure they have a PFD and they're dressed for it, all right? Because if things happen, I had a catastrophic failure of a piece of equipment that caused me to flip. It's not unlike if you were driving down the road, all right, and you had a blowout on a perfectly good tire, all right, and you crashed, all right. It's nothing more than that, all right? People say, well, you shouldn't have been driving in bad weather. Well, yeah, maybe. But I shouldn't have been kayaking in bad weather. Yeah. But nonetheless, it was still safe until it wasn't. And then a rare event happened where things just lined up and it caused a problem. So take it from me, a guy who's cheated death 5 times. I'm running out of opportunities to cheat death. All right, just one time is going to get me. But take all the necessary precautions. Before I went out, I checked everything on my kayak. I checked the buckles, I checked the latches, I checked everything when I went out on my kayak. I go through a checklist. You should have a similar checklist before you set onto the water. And make sure everything is sound. And make sure it's good to go. But even with a checklist, like I have, things can happen. Catastrophic failure can cause death if you're not prepared to meet that situation head on. So please, take it from me, do that. Now, the after effects is trauma and PTSD, and so I can't get back on a kayak, which is a shame because I love kayak fishing. So you will see me on the water, but on another horse, on a full craft Sea Eagle 375 FC. So you will see me there next week on the water. So it's just a different, thing. But things can happen. It just can happen. So even though I'm going to be on a more stable craft, it can happen. And you just have to prepare for that worst case scenario. Please go through a checklist. Dress appropriately. Always wear your PFD and make sure people know where you are. Because people knew where I was. And as soon as somebody saw me roll, flip my kayak. Somebody watched that happen. Immediately people went into emergency mode. You may be in the water a long time. I should have been dead. But because I do take precautions, I didn't die. And because of all the people that were working so hard to get me in, another 10 minutes, that strut that I was sitting on broke right at the shore. Say what you will about that strut, but it broke off right when I got to shore. If that broke off while I was out in the lake, I would have expended heat trying to tread water, and I would have froze to death on my kayak. I just was in the water too long. So 10 more minutes in the water, I would have died. But because of everybody's effort and the way I prepared myself, I survived. I need you guys to learn from my mistake, but also what I did right. Don't take unnecessary chances. Do not go out when it's white capping in a kayak. But make sure that people know where you are. You know, before people set sail, people do they put like sort of a flight plan, but a sail plan, and they make it public to those who at the marina or to those who know them. Make sure people know that you're where you are and how long you're going to be, so they know. If indeed you have a kayak or something that separates yourself from, make sure there's an information panel on your kayak of who you are, telephone numbers, things like that. So if the kayak is found and you're not, somebody can make a phone call. I have that on my kayak. So make sure that you go through these little things. These little things, one little thing can save your life. Please be safe out there. Have fun out there. I will get through this trauma. I will get back on the water. And thank you to all the YouTubers, all my friends that have helped me recoup some of that. I got 2 nice new rods, and we're just going to get back on the water and have fun. But in the meantime, you will see me not take the little, borderline hairline chances that I did 2 weeks ago. So thank you very much for tuning in to my channel. Please, support my my sponsor, Dark Horse Tackle, and I want to thank everybody for all your support. So thank you very much, and you will continue to see more videos and things like that. So I will see you guys where? Out on the water.